All right, thank you for joining everyone. So this is the New York iMapInvasives monthly webinar for the month of November. So we're very happy that you're all here with us today. And today's topic is reporting invasives with the new iMapInvasives Survey123 Form. And I'll be presenting today. I am Mitchell O'Neill, the End User Support Specialist for iMapInvasives with the New York Natural Heritage Program. All right, and so that's me. So I see a lot of you are already introducing yourselves in the chat box. If anyone else is interested, I have some prompts that you can answer. So your name and organization, which iMap tool you use to collect data if you have an iMap account, and have you used Survey123 before? And so I set it so that everyone's muted when they entered the call, but later on, when there's opportunities for questions, you're welcome to unmute yourself at that time. Other than that, I would ask you all to stay muted, and during the presentation, please feel free to enter any questions you have into the chat box. All right. For anyone not familiar with us, I work at the New York Natural Heritage Program. We're most well known for rare species work, biodiversity conservation work. Some of our projects are the Trees for Tribs and the Conservation Guides. But since invasive species pose such a threat to biodiversity, part of the Natural Heritage Program is the Invasive Species Database Program. And we work on a number of projects, the most well-known being iMapInvasives. And just to briefly make sure we're all on the same page, when I say invasive species, I'm referring to species of plants, animals, insects, and pathogens that are both non-native and have some sort of negative impact. One example that is getting a lot of attention at the moment is hemlock woolly adelgid. And so we at iMapInvasives are tasked with managing the invasive species data for New York State. So iMapInvasives is used by several jurisdictions across North America, but in New York State, it's the Invasive Species Database, the official centralized invasive species database to support PRISM, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. So iMap provides species distributions and reports. There's functionality for early detection alerts. The data are available as web map services, so they can appear on maps online. And you can also use iMap to track control efforts and the results of those control efforts. And I mentioned PRISMs, for those who are not familiar. Those are partnerships for regional invasive species management. And New York is divided into 8 PRISMs. And I highly encourage you to look up your region's PRISM and connect with them. So they do a lot of great outreach work, a lot of great management coordination. A huge variety of work is done by these PRISMs. And so where does the data in iMap come from? It started with a lot of uploads from partner organizations at the local, state, and federal level, land and water managers, researchers, museums, herbariums, or herbaria. But lately, or in the past few years, a hugely important data source has been data entered by community scientists and professionals. So anyone on this call, we are very grateful for your interest in iMapInvasives and reporting invasive species, because you're a very important data source for New York State. And I also just wanted to mention that anyone can report to the database, so any member of the public, any professional, and all of these records are reviewed or can be reviewed and confirmed by species ID experts. So that brings me to today's agenda. So this is our first training on the new iMapInvasives Survey123 form that was just developed by NatureServe. So first, since I know a lot of you will be familiar with other tools used to collect IMAP data. I want to frame where this new tool fits in and which tool makes the most sense for you. Then we'll get into account setup for anyone who has not set up their IMAP account yet. Even if you have set up your iMap account, I encourage you to log in and follow along on some steps because there are some pieces of information from your account online that you will need to be able to use the iMap Survey123 form. And then we'll get into some more stuff specific to using the iMap Survey123 form, including a live demo. All right, so noticing a little bit is cut off on the bottom, but you can find this table at nyimappinvasives.org/reportandinvasive. So this is a table that outlines the data collection tools that are available to iMap users. I'm going to, rather than go through every row right now, I'm going to try to illustrate this with a couple of pictures. But the 4 apps I'm focusing on right now are the iMap mobile app, which has been around for a while, the iMap online interface, the iMap Survey123 form, which is new and which the training will focus on today, and then iMMA, also known as IMA, which stands for iMap Mobile Advanced. All right, so the simplest data collection tool is the iMap mobile app. So this is the simplest tool that's used by the widest audience, I would say, and you can do point data, so no polygons or lines, but points, and you can record presence or not detected, and you can do all of this without connectivity, so you don't need to be connected to the internet. You can be out in the field. And so in the picture, I'm showing green points, which are presences in iMap, and yellow points, which are not detected. But we recognize that a lot of people need to record some more complex data in iMap. So this could be presence polygons, so actually like tracing out an infestation on the ground, as well as treatment data. So you can do all of this on the online interface, but of course you need to have connectivity. So if you have enough connection to go on the internet, you can go to iMapInvasives.natureserve.org and you can record records there. And that online interface is mobile responsive. But we recognize that a lot of people need to record this sort of data without connectivity. So they'll be out in the field and they need to be able to do this without connection. So we've also developed the iMap Mobile Advanced, also known as IMA. So this allows you to report treatments and polygons. It typically requires some GIS experience, and you need an organizational ArcGIS online account. And so it's a little bit more complex to use. It's really great for complex surveys like the one in the image. So it's a huge, very detailed polygon with tons of records. And so this is used mostly by agency and PRISM staff and other natural resource professionals. So this is really good for those really highly detailed survey efforts. But with these 3 apps, there's a gap that we found where some people need to record these more complex data types, so treatments, polygons, but they don't have access to an organizational ArcGIS online account. So NatureServe developed the iMap Survey123 form. So this allows you to record polygons. You can record presences as polygons, points, and lines, and you can also record treatments. And you do not need to have GIS experience or an ArcGIS online account, and you do not need connectivity. And just to go through that in one more way, to think about which tool will be best for you, you need to think about what records you create. So if you just create simple point data, so whether a species was found at a location or not, then the iMap mobile app is probably the way to go. So this is the most widely used app among the public. So this will still be probably the most widely used one and one that we will still recommend even with this new form that we've just created. And so if you record more complicated data, so treatments, points, lines, and polygons, then the iMap mobile app will not work for you and you'll need to look at some other options. So it depends on whether you record observations outside of connectivity. So if the answer is no, say you only record observations where you have really great cell service, or you only record observations when you're back in the office, then the online interface will work for you. But if you need to be able to do this out in the field where connectivity varies, the question is, do you have an organizational ArcGIS Online account? So if you do not, then the best option is this new iMap Survey123 form. It's form-centric. There's no AGOL requirement. You can use it outside of connectivity. You can do points, lines, and polygons, and you can do presences, not detected records, and treatments. If you do have an AGOL account, you have the option of those two. So you could use the iMap Survey123 form, or you can use IMA, which is map-centric and requires some more GIS experience and that organizational ArcGIS account. And again, this is used mostly by agency and PRISM staff and some other natural resources professionals. And so if you want to look more about, or look into more detail about what the different capabilities of each of these tools is, you can go to this link down here, nyimappinvasives.org/report-invasive, and see the full table. One other thing I'm going to point out are these bottom two rows. So this goes over what happens to records after you report a record using each of these tools. And so for these first three, the iMap mobile app, iMap Online, and this new iMap Survey123, they go right into the iMap database pretty quickly. So for the first two, it's immediate. And for this new iMap Survey123, that happens on an hourly basis. And then those go right into the iMapInvasives online database. This IMA, iMap Mobile Advanced, is a little bit different, where those go into ArcGIS Online, where they are reviewed, and then usually at the end of the field season or at certain points in the middle of the field season, those will be crosswalked over. So today's focus is on the iMap Survey123 form, which, like the mobile app or online observations, goes into iMap as unconfirmed. And we have experts that review records and set them to confirmed if they're correct. And so good pictures are crucial for keeping the confirming process efficient. So this is really important for the iMap mobile app, the iMap Online, and the iMap Survey123. It's really important to have pictures because that's the easiest way that someone can go in and check whether the species identity is correct. And on that note, here's just an example. So if a picture of a hemlock branch is not clear, it can be hard to tell whether or not different things on the branch are indeed hemlock adelgid, or maybe they're a spider egg sac or a chunk of snow. It's hard to tell if it's not clear. So it's really important to take clear, focused pictures. They should be close up enough that you can see the details. One tip is to tap on the screen where the organism is so that it focuses. And also you can put a hand or a sheet of paper behind the organism, which can help focus. And there's an example of a very detailed picture. All right, so to use the iMap Survey123, you need to have an iMap account, just like any of the other data collection tools. So I'll briefly go into setting up and getting into your iMap account, and then getting the pieces of information that you need to use the Survey123 form. So these are your person ID, is the essential one, and then there's two more that will apply to some of you, which are your organization ID and project ID. So to set up your account or log in, you can go to iMapInvasives.org, and it will bring you to our new website. And there's a bunch of information on the website, but the thing I'm pointing you to right now is the login button at the top right. And so I'll encourage everyone to follow along here if possible. And you could do this on your phone as well if you want to keep your webinar screen on your computer. But once you go to the iMapInvasives.org site and click Login, it'll bring you to the Login/Create Account portal. So if you already have an account, you can log in up here. You might need to reset your password if you haven't logged in a long time. If you don't have an account, you can sign up right under here. So you put in your information in for jurisdiction. I'm assuming most people on this call are New Yorkers, so you would put in New York for jurisdiction and then click that join button. And this will send an email to the email you listed, and you need to check for that email from iMapInvasives because there will be an activation link in there. So it'll say click here, and you click that to open up the user agreement, and once you read and accept the user agreement, then your account will be active and you'll be able to go and log in. I will note that sometimes this ends up in your junk mail or your spam box, so make sure you check there if you're not seeing it. And then you can log in and it will look like this. And there's this pop-up that tells you all of the recent updates. And once you're up to date, you can X out. It always has this tip of clearing the cache whenever there's a new release of iMap. And so there's the main menu on the top left, navigation tools like zooming in and out on the left side. On the top are action tools where you can filter on species and create reports. And then geographic layers on the right where you can turn on whether you're looking at presences, not detected species, treatments. And I'm going to focus on the main menu because this is where you can get those ID numbers that you need for the Survey123 form. So click on the main menu and select your account. And so that will bring you to this account page. It'll have your information up here instead of mine. And the first thing I'll point you to is this person ID. So write this down for now so that you have it for the training, but there is a way to save it in the Survey123 app. But you need to get this number from your account online to be able to connect your Survey123 records to your account. So just jot that down. And then below this are the organizations and projects. And this is where you will find the ID numbers for those. Just to clarify, so organizations and projects are both ways to group data in iMapInvasives. So if you are doing invasive species surveys or management as a part of your job duties, that's a good place for an organization. So join your employer's organization if you are a natural resource professional. But these organizations are not essential, so not everyone in iMap has an organization. Citizens, scientists, and volunteers, for example, do not need to be in an organization, so you can still report species and everything without having to be connected to an organization. It's just important for people who do surveys and management on behalf of their organization. And then there's also projects, which are another good way to group data, more so for projects and certain initiatives than for an organization. And it's great for people volunteering for organizations. For example, some PRISM set up volunteer projects. So if you're volunteering for your PRISM or something and they ask you to join a project, this would be the instance where you would join a project. Other examples would be mapping efforts across organizations. And if you do want to join an organization or project, you do that by clicking Edit on the top right of your user account page, and then scroll down to the Organizations box and click Request to Join. And then there will be a text box, and you can type in your organization. This is the same workflow for joining a project. You would just go into the next box down into the Projects box. But once you've added in your organization or project, make sure you press Save, and that will be in the top right corner. So the Edit button will turn into a Save button. And so then it will appear in your account as a pending member until the organization or project admin changes you to a member. So for those of you who do have organizations and projects in your iMap account, you need to grab the ID numbers associated with those to be able to use them in the Survey123. So the easiest way to find that is, so scroll down to the organization section in your user account, and if you click on the organization, it'll bring you to the page of that organization. And there are two places you can usually see the organization number. So one is at the end of the URL. So you can see in red, it says 741. So that's the organization number for my organization. And you can also see it on the tab label, at least in the browsers that I use. So if anyone is part of an organization, you can click on your organization and jot down your organization number. And again, it's okay to have no organization number. All right, so that's everything you should need from the online. I did also want to quickly mention email alerts. I won't go into them, but I just want you to be aware that you can set up these really powerful email alerts for certain geographic areas and certain species that you're interested in, and they can be very powerful. And since the Survey123 data go into iMap on an hourly basis, if you report an invasive species at noon, it will be in the database at 1, and email alerts will fly, and professionals across the state will see your records. And if it's a high priority invasive or high priority area, this is a really good way to coordinate a rapid response. All right, so we've gone over the data collection tools and going into your iMap account. So now we can get into more details about the iMap Survey123 form. So I want to just frame some parts of the Survey123 form so that it makes more sense once we get into the details. The first thing I want to go over is the iMap data schema. So in iMap, every record falls under a parent searched area record. So there's always a searched area polygon, and then within that, there can be these presence, not detected, and treatment records. So presence records, for example, they can be a point or a polygon inside of the searched area, or they can be a polygon that is equal to the searched area. Not detected species are always species that are not found in the entire searched area, and then treatments like presences can be within the searched area or equal to the full searched area. And an important note on treatments is that they have to be over an existing presence record. So if you're recording a treatment, you need to make sure to record the presence at that location too, and then the treatment on top of it. It's also fine if it's a pre-existing record in iMap, then you can just put the treatment on top of that. And the way that sort of looks in the Survey123 app is in this sort of nested boxes structure. So you can see these boxes for the searched area, for the presence, not detected, and then you can open up those boxes using the triangle drop-down button. So this gray box represents a Survey123 Form record, and so within it there are boxes for specific things like general questions. That's where you put in your name and ID and everything. Then searched area attribute fields, and there's also boxes for presence records, not detected records, and treatments applied. So for the searched area, you'll need to draw a polygon, and then you can fill out details in the searched area attribute fields. And then if you find species within that polygon, within that searched area, you can record them. So you'll record them as presence records, and so you'll draw a new polygon for the presence, or use the existing polygon, which I'll show you how to do later. But you'll have the new presence record, and you can record the species that you found there. And maybe you found multiple species, so you can add more species to this one geography that you've made, or geometry. And you can also add more presence records. So you can either add species here into this same polygon, or you could create more locations, in this case a point. So you found invasive species at another spot within the searched area record. And you can have multiple species there, and you can have multiple presence records within the searched area. The not detected records, those apply to the entire searched area. So the species that you're recording as not detected, these should not be the same species as you are recording as presence. And then finally, the treatment records. So each treatment record corresponds to one target species and one polygon. So if you are doing treatments on multiple polygons within a searched area, those will be separate treatments. And if you're treating multiple species, those will also be separate treatments. And I just wanted to show you what this sometimes looks like in the Survey123. So once you're in the deep within the form, you might get confused at some points, but there's this blue help text that should clarify things. So for example, in the middle of the presence records section, after you've created some records, you'll have these options. So here it says, add an additional species at this presence location using the add plus icon below. So that would be if you're in one of the records and you have one or more species already, do you want to add more species? And then below that, in the box outside of it, it's add additional presence locations using the add icon below. So that would be if you want to add a separate location where you will tag the same or new species there. So always refer to this blue help text if you get confused about what you're adding. And I wanted to just provide an example to show that this tool is very flexible. So this can be, you can create really complicated records, or you can create very simple records. So on this picture, I've shown hypothetical infestations outlined in white dotted lines. So for the more complex example, let's say you made a survey plot and made that into your searched area, and then searched for the invasives within it. So you would draw the searched area polygon, shown here in purple, and then where you find the infestation, you would make a presence polygon, shown in green, and then if you found it in another spot, you would trace that as well as another presence record. In other cases, maybe you have not made a formal survey plot. You don't really have a wider area that you surveyed. You have just run into some infestation and you want to record its extent as a polygon, but you don't necessarily have this searched area beyond the extent of the infestation. So in that case, let's say you happen upon this infestation outlined in dotted white lines. So if you don't have a searched area, you still have to create a searched area because all records in iMap have to have a searched area, but just trace the infestation itself. So you would trace the searched area, you would trace the infestation to make the searched area, and then when you create your presence record, you just use that same polygon, and there's an option to do that in the Survey123. So this will be the more simple version where you just record the presence you record the presence as a polygon, but still following the iMap data schema where there's always a searched area. And I think that will be useful in a lot of cases. And then one more tip I just wanted to mention before we get into using Survey123. This is something that can cause some headaches for some devices. I know it happens on iPhones. So if you click on a text box, the keyboard will appear so that you can type in your response. And on some devices, the keyboard will seem to get stuck and you can't get out of it. So say you click on site name, but then you realize you don't actually have anything to enter for that field, so you want to just get out of the keyboard, but it's hard to get rid of it. So the way you get rid of it is you tap the screen above the keyboard and then scroll down. And once your fingertip hits the keyboard will pop down. So again, if you get into this situation where you're stuck with a keyboard that you don't want there, just tap the screen above it and scroll down, and the keyboard will go away. All right, so now we can get into accessing the survey. So first you need to download the Survey123 app from the App Store. So that's an app by Esri, and the iMap Survey123 Form exists within that app. So it's not its own separate app. If you search iMap Survey123 on the App Store, I'm not sure what would come up, but that wouldn't be how you find it. So first you download the app onto your device, and then you go to this link in your browser. And I will paste that into the chat box in a minute. And so that will bring you up to this page in your browser. So if you're on your phone, you'll go into your internet, type that in, and it'll bring you to this. And there will be this button down here that says download. That would be to download the Survey123 app. So if you already have it, you don't need to press that. You need to press this larger square at the top. And I know on iPhones, there's actually a pop-up that comes up that will encourage you to open in the Survey123 Field app. So that's what you will choose. And so now I'll get into the live demo. So I'll put this into the chat real quick for anyone who wants to copy and paste. All right.
And Mitch, if I could jump in real quick, just a note on that link, that should be entered on your device that has Survey123 installed, not on your, the computer you're using for the webinar. So that link to access the survey form should be entered into your device browser that has Survey123.
Yep.
That's correct. So it's .arcg.is?
Yep.
Wow.
So yeah, like John said, so I have Survey123 on the desktop just to show it easier in a webinar, but most of you will be using this on a tablet or a phone. So at this point, just pretend that this is a mobile device. So not a desktop screen, pretend I'm on my phone. So just to show you where to find that link if you can't find it after this webinar, we have it on our website. One place you can find it is in the training tab. We have self-guided training resources. And so one of the things here is the setup document for the iMap Survey123 form. And so the link is in here. So I'll click on that, and this is the pop-up that happens on the desktop. There's a similar pop-up that appears for a lot of phones as well. So I'll click Open ArcGIS Survey123, and it will open the iMap survey in your Survey123 app. Some of you might get a screen that says like a sign-in screen, but there is an option to continue without signing in, and you do not need to sign in to ArcGIS Online to use this. And so if you don't have ArcGIS Online, definitely click the sign in without an account, because your iMap account will not sign you in. All right. So now we are in the survey, and this is appearing much like it would appear on your tablet screen or your phone screen. So this first section is the observer information. So do you have an iMapInvasives account, and do you know your iMapInvasives person ID? So hopefully we all do, because we just checked that. So you click yes, and then you can put your person ID in here. So I'll put mine in. And if you get stuck and forget what the person ID is, there is some help info built in right here to help you find it. And then you enter your name and the email for your iMap account. And then below that are where you can enter organization and project IDs. So I'll enter my organization ID, but I don't really have a project ID for this. It'll collect the date automatically. And then it's very important to pick your state/province where you are collecting data. So I think most of us are in New York, so you can select New York. And what this is doing is actually downloading the species list, or not downloading, but filtering to the New York State species list. So when you click on it, I just clicked, nothing's happening. It seemed frozen for a second, but it just takes a minute to load. So just click New York and give it a minute to select. And all right, so all of these fields I've just entered. It took me 2 to 3 minutes, but I would have to do this every single time I want to record an observation, and that might not be efficient for most of us. So there is a way to save these responses so that you can use these first couple of responses in every record that you submit. So the way you do that is using the Set as Favorites feature. So there's that hamburger button on the top right, the 3-line menu. So if you click on that, there's an option to set as favorite answers. So I click that, and that has set those as favorites. And it might seem like that's the final step, but there is actually one more step. You have to save these favorites in your survey as a draft. So once you click set as favorites, you have to actually X out of the survey. And you choose the Save in Drafts option. And so now that'll be in your drafts with your favorite answers. And so now every time you go into the Survey123, instead of having to remember your person ID and write everything in, you can just go to that top menu button. Oops, I must have missed something. Let me enter that in real quick. 19183.
Everyone's going to know your person ID.
All right, so I saved it in drafts. So you can see my drafts showing up there. So now, if I want to collect a new record, I just click Collect. And instead of having to go write everything in for a third time, I can go to this button, and now the paste answers from favorite are there. So I click that, and it will take a second because it's entering in that New York, which takes a minute. But now you are all set, and all of your personal information is entered in, and you don't have to remember all those numbers. All right. So the first box that appears is the searched area polygon. So you click on the little icon to draw your polygon. Most of you, you should be using a GPS-enabled device for this. But I'm on my computer, which is not GPS-enabled at the moment. So I'm just going to zoom to a random place, but it should go to your location. So let's say I am surveying this area right here. Bring this up a little bit so you can see the full screen. Right, so there's this polygon icon. So this is how you draw polygons. So I'm going to click on that. And it's blinking, meaning I'm actively using this. And then you can drop points by tapping on the screen. So I'm going to drop a point there, there. So sometimes this can be a little bit tricky. You kind of need to practice to get used to it. But sometimes I accidentally tap and I start to get a crazy polygon and I don't know how to fix it. So one way to get out of that is to just say that you're done with it. So there's this checkbox button on the right. And then if you press this polygon button again, you'll have an option to replace it. So you can start over if it's got too messed up. And then you can drop points. If you don't like one of your points, you put it in the wrong spot, you can go back and redo it. And I'll just, let's say that looks good. But then I realize, oh, actually those don't really align with the building very well. So you want to edit a point, you can click this edit button, and then you can slide the points to where you want them. And yeah, so I'll say that's good, and I'll press check. I wanted to show you one more thing, so I'll redo that. So there's also this button, which is not lit up for me. So this button here with the little location icon, this uses your GPS location. So if you clicked this, it would drop a point to where you are physically, or where your device is. And so, for instance, you could walk around a survey plot or something and drop points that way without having to draw it on the map. But I don't have GPS enabled on this computer, so I will just draw the polygon and click done. And I encourage you to play around with this before you go out in the field. It's a little bit easier to get used to it when you're not out there collecting real data. So I'll press this check mark, and I'm done. And this searched area attribute fields box is optional, but I just want to point it out because there's a whole lot of useful fields in here if you collect this sort of data. So disturbance type, disturbance severity, stuff about the landscape and native vegetation, crew details, weather details, all sorts of stuff. But I'm going to leave that blank for now. And then, so let's say I found a species in here, so I can make a presence record. and you can decide whether you are recording it as a point, a line, or a polygon. I'll click a polygon. And so here's this really useful option. So presence polygons should be located within the searched area polygon. And so you can, one way to do that is to just use the searched area polygon for this presence record. So for instance, if you just drew the searched area polygon around an infestation you found, you can just use that searched area polygon. So I think that will be useful in a lot of cases. In this case, just to show the polygon tool again, I will say no and go in and draw a polygon. This is a little bit harder for me because I am not using my GPS, but I need to make sure my presence is within the searched area record. And I don't remember which building I chose actually, so I'll just pop out of that and use I'll just use the searched area polygon. All right, and so you've created your presence polygon. So now you can just say what species are actually there. So since we're all testing, I encourage you to create a record and use fake species. This might take a minute to load as you're typing through, so just be a little bit patient. But I'll select fake species. And one of the really useful things here is the prompt for photos. So unlike the basic mobile app, you can record multiple photos in this, and it gives some suggestions. So a close-up photo, a general photo, like the close-up would be a really close-up view on an identifying feature of the plant or other organism. General might show the entire organism, and infestation could show a zoomed-out view of the entire infestation. And so the button on here, the little file icon, that's for selecting a photo that's on your device. But you will also have a camera button right here. And that's what I would encourage you press, because you can click on that and then you can take a picture right in the app if you haven't taken a picture yet. Oops. And so I put fake species, and then you take your pictures, make sure they're clear and focused. And then you can record these other types of information in there as well, but these are not required. So like if you haven't done a formal search effort, you might not have a time search, you just happened upon it. So you can leave that blank and put any details you want us to know that aren't captured in this comments field. And since fake species is set as a plant in the database, there are some plant fields that pop up. These fields would be different if you were reporting an insect, for example. And then, so then you get here. So in this first option, it's add additional species at this presence location. So I mean, in my case, I just used the searched area, but if I had created a point within the searched area, this would be asking if there were other species at that same point. And then this next one is saying add additional presence locations using the add button icon below. So that's if you want to add a new location within the searched area.
And those gray boxes you mentioned are just visible if you look closely.
Yeah, so the gray shading is very boxes within, like one layer of box change is a very small change in color. So you sometimes have to squint to see the change from light gray to dark gray. And then so not detected records. So you click this plus button if you want to tag any species that were not found in the searched area. I only want to do fake species right now, so I'm not going to actually record a record because you can't record fake species as present and not detected. But it's kind of the same idea. You can report a picture, For instance, if you're doing hemlock woolly adelgid, it'd be good to include a picture of at least the hemlock branch and show that there's no woolly masses on it. And you can record why it's not there. So maybe it never was there. Maybe it's been treated and you're doing a post-treatment survey. So that's how you would add a not detected record. Let's say we opened up to look at it, but we don't want to actually report a record. So I'll just close that for now. And then, so here's the treatments applied. So if you did a treatment, you would add in the treatment there. And it has the option, again, to use the whole searched area, or you can create a polygon within that searched area. And so each treatment you record will correspond to one polygon and one species. So if I was recording a species, if I was recording a treatment here, it would probably be for fake species, because treatments need to be recorded on top of a presence record. So you can't just do a treatment record for a new species that has not been recorded there yet. You need to make sure to record the presence below it. So I would do fake species here, and you can add in more details below. But I'm not going to, oh, and you would select whether it's physical, chemical, biological, etc. And which one you pick will determine which options come up. So physical, there's all sorts of subcategories of physical. And I think, yeah, there's even more fields that pop up depending on which one you pick. So physical, mechanical, manual, and then within that, it could be any number of these things. But let's say I'm not going to do a treatment record right now. I just want to showcase it, so I'll just get rid of that. And now I'll try to submit it. So once you are done with your record, you can go to this checkbox button at the bottom right. So I'm going to click enter to say I'm done. Oh, but it's giving me issues. So the not detected records, even though I'm not entering anything, it is expecting me to enter something. This is not because you have to enter not detected records. This is because I clicked that plus button. So I started a not detected record just to show you, and then I didn't delete it. So what you need to do if you get this sort of thing is you need to go down to the bottom and click the trash button under that. So this will delete that not detected that I started to make. So delete. So it deleted that not detected record, and it goes back to this plus. And I'll need to do the same thing for the treatment. So I opened up the box, and then I'll go down and delete it since I didn't actually fill out a full record. And so now the record should be ready to submit. So I'll click this check box, this check symbol, and you get a few options. So since I'm connected to internet, I have this option to send now. If you're out in the field, the best option would usually be to save to the outbox. So I'll save to the outbox just to show you what that looks like. But this will send the record. Yeah, this save in outbox will keep the record on your phone for now to be sent to the database later. Send now would send directly to the database. Well, technically to ArcGIS Online first, and then on an hourly basis, it's uploaded to the iMap database. So I'll click Save in Outbox. And so now on the main Survey123, on the main screen for the iMap Survey123 form, you have drafts where you saved your favorites. You have collect where you would collect new data, and you have this outbox button. So this is where you go to upload all the records you submitted. So if you're out in the field, you might have 10 records in the outbox because you couldn't send them because you're out in the field. So you click on here, and you can click this send button. So you can click on the record, and it will ask if you want to if you click on the record, it'll ask if you want to edit it. So I'll say no, it's already all set, but you could go in and edit it. But I'm just going to click send. So this will send the record eventually into the database. It'll go into the ArcGIS online, and then on an hourly basis, it will dump into the iMapInvasives online database. To show you an example, so I uploaded a record last night because that one I just recorded will not land in iMap for up to an hour. So this is what it looks like in iMap, and I clicked on the record, and it shows up in iMap. If I looked at the specific presence record, so it'll show where it is, that it's fake species, and down here it shows you that it was Survey123, but the records do go into iMapInvasives, and you can always look at them by logging in. And let's see if I mentioned everything. Yes, I think I went through everything in the live demo. So I'm going to go back into the presentation, but if there's more questions, things you want to see again, we can go through that at the end. All right. So I just did the live demo. And so the next topic, I just covered. If you want to go into more detail and look at your records, I just wanted to briefly lay out how you can do that. So this is something I'm suggesting you can do after the webinar. If you submit your fake species record, you can log into iMap online an hour from now, and you should be able to find it. So you can use the filter tool. You can filter on fake species. The filter tool is right here, by the way. There's also a toggle to filter on your own records. So you could filter on the records you've submitted. You could put a date in there if you want to just see the record you submitted today. And then your record will pop up. And you can use the Identify Measure tool right here and click Area to draw a polygon around the record to select it, and then you can look at the details. And while you're in there, you can look at other stuff available on iMapInvasives. So you can use the report tool, you can create distribution layers, you can create email alerts. There's a lot of stuff you can do in iMap, but I won't go through that right now. So I saw one question about offline Basemaps, so I'll cover that. If you are in an area with very poor cell service, no internet connection, and you're using the Survey123 form, you might find that the default map doesn't load. You'll have a blank screen. Fortunately, you can still use the app, so you can still draw polygons, you just won't be able to use the map to trace things. So if you find yourself in this situation, one thing you could do is walk around the searched area and drop points. So you can use that location button to drop points where you are. And so then even though you can't see what's going on the map, you can walk around and it'll take your GPS locations. And then likewise, you can walk to the infestations and drop points there as well. But if you expect this to happen to you and you want to be able to hand draw polygons using the Basemaps, and you expect to be in these sort of remote areas, I would suggest using an offline Basemap. And I think this could be very useful for some, but I think for a lot of you, this is probably not necessary. But for those of you who are interested, Colleen on the iMap team, Colleen Lux, has made a really great offline Basemap that can be used in Survey123 and Collector. So that's a link to access this offline Basemap. So it's a New York statewide vector base map, which is, we had a raster version before that took up a lot of space. The vector version is a little bit smaller, still somewhat large. And you can use it in the latest versions of Survey123 and Collector. And here's a picture of it to give you a sense of what it looks like. It has topo contours, it has conserved lands polygons through NIPAD, hydrography, and it has streets and municipal boundaries. And there's an Esri support article that goes through how you can sideload a file onto your device or SD card. So this process, if you're doing it for the first time, it's a little bit difficult, I'd say. If you've done it before, it's probably easier, but there is this document that Esri provides that goes through this. And you can also contact us for help. And so this stuff is sort of new, like the Survey123 is new, so we actually don't have all of this information in an easy spot at the moment. So for now, I will include all of this in a follow-up email, but we will also work on getting this into our self-training resources so that you'll be able to use that link. And oh yeah, so this is where it is on our site, newyorkimappinvasives.org/training. That will have Survey123 help docs as well as general IMAP stuff. There's some more general IMAP resources on the network site at iMapInvasives.org/help. And you can always email me at iMapInvasives@dec.gov. And so with that, I think we've gone through everything that I wanted to get to on the Survey123 form. And so we have these next 15 minutes, and I could stay on a little bit longer if anyone needs me, but we have these next few minutes to go through some questions. So I know a lot of stuff has gone through the chat box already, so I'll start looking through those to see if anything should be addressed.
There were three in particular that I noticed that you or John might want to address. One was about the GPS. Like, could you just walk, like, with breadcrumbs?
Yes. So I'll show it in here real quick. So in the survey, if you go into draw a polygon, so if you go into draw the polygon, there's this button right here. It has a little target symbol. So that will drop a point where you are. So you could stand up one corner of your plot, drop a point, walk around, drop points, and that will draw the polygon for you.
Cool.
And it's not clickable for me because I don't have the GPS enabled, but it should be clickable for you.
It works on my phone now that you pointed out.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Another question I saw was Linda asked if the default is acres, and can you change that default unit?
I don't know of a way to do that.
So yeah, regarding changing the units, that's an excellent question. I haven't thought of that before. I did do a quick search, and it appears that that is using a system setting based on your location, essentially. So if your device is set up as a US based device, it will use imperial units. That's what I'm seeing so far, but we'll keep looking into that because that is a very good question. But I looked through the Survey123 settings and unfortunately didn't find anything, which is a little surprising to me. But yeah, we'll keep looking into that.
And another one along those lines that I thought was also a great question. If you are in the field and you do have connectivity and you do hit send, and then you go to somewhere without connectivity, will the records still get to iMap?
I believe if you don't have connectivity, that button won't appear.
Right, but we mentioned the 1 hour delay. So if you're in the field and you have connectivity and you hit send, you finish your work, then you get in a car.
I think that would be fine because it would go into AGOL. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
As long as the survey is uploaded and is, you can see it in the sent folder. If it fails for any reason, it will still be in outbox. So as you can see on Mitch's screen here, it has one sent survey. If it's in sent, that means it's been received to the ArcGIS online server. So it's good. If it's in sent, no matter what, it's good. If it gets interrupted or for some reason fails, it will go back to outbox, sort of like your email.
Cool. Okay, those were the three that I had highlighted. There may be more. There were lots.
Yeah, I have a few written down. One, Ryan asked about having multiple favorites. It's not directly possible to have multiple favorites. However, you can have multiple drafts, draft surveys. And from those, you can specify which one you want as favorites. So, for example, if you have one favorite stored, or if you have one draft saved that has an organization A and a second draft that's titled organization B, you can then go into either of those in your drafts folder and mark one or the other as the favorite as needed. So you might just want to play around with that a little bit, but that's sort of the way you could have almost multiple. Linda wanted another refresher on actually even saving the favorites, which is a good point. So, Mitch, if you just open a survey and maybe just fill in one or two fields and do that process.
So I'll just fill in those two for now, but I'd recommend going all the way down to state/province and then saving that far. So I'll just put that much, and then you go into this and click Set as Favorites. So it's that top menu button that looks like a hamburger. Oh, WebEx notification I need to wait for. Okay, so now I'll click Set as Favorites, and there should be a message that tells you you're not done, but there's not. So the thing you have to do is X out and save as draft. So X out and save in draft. And so I have another draft in there now. So it's saved as favorites. So now when I go into collect again, I go up to that hamburger button and I click paste answers from favorite. And so it'll just paste those two answers I just saved.
Yeah, it is. As Mitch mentioned, I joke because, when you select mark as favorite, I joke that it appears that nothing happened, but in fact it worked. But you're right. You have to make sure you save that survey that has been marked as, with the favorite answers into your drafts folder. So that workflow is a little hard to follow, but once you try it a few times, it will make sense. And we can provide some other help docs from Esri as well. And then there are two actually related questions in the chat I'll just address. So Kate asks, how might this work when multiple people are collecting data in the same area? And then Ryan asked, if we have ArcGIS online, do you suggest using Collector versus Survey123? So I'll actually address both of those at once. If you are interested in sort of collaborative data, collaborative data collection, that would definitely veer more into Collector or iMap Mobile Advanced, because you can have one person create the searched area and then multiple people going out and tagging presence records to that same searched area. So the short answer to Kate's question is it's not really possible to have collaborative data collection with the Survey123 tool. It's sort of on one device, you collect the records at once, whereas with Collector, you could, and in our iMap Mobile Advanced, you could create that searched area ahead of time and have, those multiple users using that same searched area. And then regarding using Survey123 versus Collector, I think it's mostly up to you. Maybe just trying both survey tools and seeing what their strengths and weaknesses are. I'd say if you have been using our iMap Mobile Advanced tool in Collector, you probably will maybe want to continue using that. I think if you're doing those more complex site, data collection, as Mitch showed in one of the other slides, yes, here on the right, that's definitely going to be more in the, avenue of Collector. I think where this tool really shines, as Mitch very elegantly put it, is in that middle category of you need more advanced data than just a point at, with one species being either detected or not detected. But you don't need all of that highly, highly detailed, data collection that's in iMap Mobile Advanced or IMA. So I think this is sort of that really nice middle ground between the two. And again, the other big strength that the Survey123 form has is that it does have that hourly digest or upload into iMap. So not sure if that fully answers the question, other than you may just want to try both in the sort of off season with some test records and see where it maybe fits into your data collection.
So I saw some questions from Frank. The survey wasn't appearing in his app anymore. Oh, okay. But if that happens to anyone, just go back to this link and you should be able to open the survey again. So always just go find this link again.
And use your browser for that.
Yes, go into your browser. Right, yes. You have to go into a browser outside of the Survey123 app. It won't come up when you search that link in the Survey123 app. And I will answer, we'll answer some more of the questions, but just because it is 2:15, I just want to thank everyone who has been on and needs to sign off now. This was our last monthly webinar of the year. So we'll see you all again in January. We're not going anywhere right now. We'll still be here to help you if you email us, but we won't be doing these webinars again until January. So keep a lookout on our website and our social media if you're interested in more trainings. So thank you, everyone.